Well, I'd like to thank everyone to Golden Years Métis Society's third town hall. This is our second town hall with just candidates for positions that are available for election for province-wide. And so we've opened up this town hall for attendees from around the province to have a chance to hear from, in today's case, our vice presidential candidates as well as our provincial youth candidates. So we're thankful and pleased that all of the vice presidential candidates and youth candidates were able to attend. And we've got, as of right now, 15 citizens and members attending and watching, which is great. And I'm sure we'll have more trickle in during the evening. This is being recorded and it will be posted on the Golden Years Métis Society YouTube channel, probably sometime tomorrow. You'll also be able to see the recording from Tuesday's town hall, in which we had the presidential candidates and the women's chairperson candidates, two of the presidential candidates. We did not have one candidate who chose not to attend. In any event, I'll give a brief update on what we're going to be doing. We'll start shortly with a brief prayer, and then just basically some information about the election. There have been some minor changes, and we just want to make sure that everyone has the correct information, or at least knows where to look for that information if they have any questions going forward. We'll then move on to the main portion of the event. We'll start with the youth answering a question, and then just kind of working our way through. I think all of the questions that we have were questions that were provided when different attendees registered and provided questions. So we thank you for those questions. We really appreciate that. And for any of you who were watching on Tuesday, some of the questions may be the same. There were some that are relevant to all the positions and some that are maybe more relevant for just the positions that these candidates are attending. So we'll get on with that. And so as we normally do in our Métis gatherings and events, we'll start with a brief opening prayer. And I would, if you will all indulge me, this is again something that normally in our community we have a great elder who assists our board and our community in conducting these prayers. But obviously with COVID and not being able to do it in person, it's a bit more difficult. So if I can just your indulgence, please. Creator, we thank you for allowing us this opportunity to hear from our future leaders and allowing us the opportunity to ask questions to better enable us to make informed decisions and to make the decision that works best for each individual citizen. We're thankful that we have a number of citizens watching today and that will hopefully watch in the future, so that the messages from our candidates will get out there as best as possible. Thank you for the beautiful day that we have today and the technology, the opportunity we have to meet virtually, given that these in-person gatherings are unfortunately not available. But there's always a blessing in even these kind of situations where we're having the opportunity to host a single event here in the Lower Mainland that's being attended by citizens from across the province. So we thank the Creator for that. And we thank you for allowing us to hear these words. So, Hai Miigwech, thank you. So that's, we'll move on. One of the important things that we wanted to raise from Golden Years Métis Society, in particular the last week or so, there's been a change in the election date. The new election date is September 21st of this year. And of course, this year, it's a complete mail-in ballot. There are no polling stations. And with a mail-in ballot, the important thing to keep in mind is that all ballots must be received by the Chief Electoral Officer by September 21st by 8 p.m. So that's very important to keep in mind if you were, for example, to postmark or send your ballot in on the 21st or a day or two before. Whether it's postmarked prior to or on the election date is irrelevant. What matters is if it's received on that by that day. So I believe ballots should be going out shortly. The candidate lists, from my understanding, have been set, or at least there's no additional candidates that can be added or sending in their information. So things are going to be starting to move quickly with ballots coming out, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to have these town hall opportunities to get some information out before these ballots start coming your way. So the ballots will be sent directly to voters. If you have recently moved, Golden Ears would suggest that you contact the Métis Nation of British Columbia immediately to confirm that they have your current mailing address, and so that those ballots will be going to the correct address. As we said, there's no in-person voting. We would note if anyone has any questions, we would encourage you to look at the Métis Nation BC website. There is a portal or a section on the website regarding the 2020 election. You could also contact the Chief Electoral Officer, and that contact information is on the MNBC website. Things like contacting about your address and updating that would be something appropriate to contact MNBC, but questions about the election should be going to the Chief Electoral Officer. And again, their contact information is on the MNBC website. With regards to how tonight will function, you'll see at the bottom there's a number of options. There's a Q&A and a chat. I would ask that any attendees, if you have a question that you would like to ask that maybe you didn't send in prior, or one that comes up as a result of something that is said by one of the candidates, please use the Q&A portion. There is an option to make it so that, or to change it so that it comes anonymously if you wish. And the candidates are aware that they have the opportunity throughout the evening to answer directly on the Q&A. My understanding is will be, for those questions that are not answered, we'll see how many we get to. The candidates have offered to provide their email addresses, so our volunteers will help send that out. And speaking of our volunteers, I would like to thank them for all the hard work that they've done helping to organize our previous two events as well as tonight. It's quite a bit of work to sort everything out and get the invitations. And if some people have not received the invitations, we do apologize. It's a little tricky making sure everyone gets the right information, but we appreciate all the hard work. And I'd like to also finally thank the board of Golden Ears for their assistance and their encouragement in organizing these events. So to start off, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the youth candidates, and we'll start in reverse alphabetical order, because when we had them here a week or so ago, we went to alphabetical order. So if I could get Ms. Rice, and looks like she's coming on. Great. Ms. Rice, if you just give me a quick second, I gotta pull up the first question here. And what we'll do is we'll just get you to introduce yourself a little bit. Okay. And within that, I'll ask you, what are your top 3 priorities and how do you plan on addressing them? And again, you've got 5 minutes, and I'll raise a little reminder when you get at 1:30 left. So.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Dave. All right, so Dansa Giwa, Brady Nitsigasan. Hello, everyone. My name is Brady. Again, thank you, Dave and Jems, for hosting the third one of these. I know it's not easy, so I really appreciate you guys putting this on and giving us an opportunity to speak about ourselves and our platforms, and hopefully reach a number of our Métis citizens, especially our youth. So I'm really hoping that we have a few on tonight, or at least a few that can spread the word. A little about me is I am very thankful. I'm here in Invermere on Ktunaxa and Secwepemc's territory. So those are the bands of the Shuswap Indian Band and a Kiskonuk Band. Invermere is in the East Kootenays, for those that don't know. I realized I really should say that because I know it's a small town. It's only a couple thousand people. So, but this is where I was raised, and this is where I'm very fortunate to call home right now. So I have, education-wise, I left home actually when I was 18 to pursue academics. And for that reason, that's actually why I haven't been able to be a part of any of the MNBC elections until this point. This is my very first one that I get to be a part of. because prior to this, I was doing a Bachelor of Science in Newfoundland. And then after that, I was doing a master's in the UK in conservation and land management. And then I was at UBC just a few years ago at UBC doing a master's of forestry. And that was when I actually got to step up for the Region 2 position when the current position holder was moving to Victoria. So, I mean, that's pretty common with us youth. We tend to move around a lot. So I feel like I can relate to that for sure. And the reason for jumping into this position is I just moved back with a new job. I'm a biologist for the Shuswap Indian Band in the Secwepemc Territory. And with that position, I'm, very happy to say that, they're very supportive of, me working with youth. I know that that's one of their priorities as well. So we definitely see areas in which, we can benefit throughout this entire process by me supporting our Métis youth. And I think I'll be able to support the local youth, Indigenous youth better as well. And so my 3 priorities for the youth in moving forward, one of them has been, and this is directly because myself has faced it as well as others who I've become quite close with that are, have been a part of our Métis youth that have now moved on or are currently a part of our Métis youth. And it's that area that unfortunately is our gap year, and we are, I know, working towards that within our staff right now, but it's just not up and running. So one of my priorities is to focus on that gap year between the early learning and our 15 and over or 18 and over youth, because I want to make sure that they are staying, interested and hopeful for, the opportunities that are coming. But I also want to make sure that they're being supported and they know their culture at that age, because we don't have as many programs focusing on that age right now. So that's definitely one of my key priorities. My second one is making sure that our youth that are at that stage of having that knowledge base, either from going to college or working or through their own life experiences, are getting the opportunities that they want, not just in governance in these positions such as this one, but in areas of which they're comfortable and they're knowledgeable, and they should have their voice heard and representing our Métis youth. And that goes to positions in governance and law, our health and wellness, our physical, our environment and climate change, our Métis language and culture, Métis language and culture. So I want to, foster those youth in those positions and make sure that they're attending the right conferences and the right workshops, and we're having them go out and represent us, not having just say myself or some other youth because they were available. I want to make sure that we have a group that represents us properly, because as youth under 30, we are experienced, we are educated, and we do want to be involved. And the third one that I'm very focused on for a priority is making sure that our BC Métis youth are included every step of the way when they leave this province. Just because they leave this province for school does not mean that they are not included in our community. So I want to make sure that we are including them as we move forward. And part of that is just making sure that we have the resources that they need to feel like they're part of the community and what they need moving forward. So that would be my 3 priorities, and I feel like my time's probably coming up. So I just want to say thanks for having me, and yeah, just if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. And we'll get Mr. Davern to come on. And so, Mr. Davern, the same question, or we'll get you to introduce yourself briefly, and then if you could address what are your top 3 priorities and how do you plan on addressing them?
Yeah, well, Tansei, bonsoir, hello and good evening. My name is Sean Davern, and I am from the Thompson Okanagan region and on the Silks territory. Yeah, a little bit about myself. I'm really thankful today. Today is a very good day for me. My roommate came into close contact with somebody who tested positive for COVID-19. She got her results back today, and she's negative, so I don't have to quarantine. I'm just feeling very, very blessed today. But yeah, a little bit about me. I got accepted into nursing school for this upcoming semester. I've been the regional youth rep for the Thompson Okanagan for the past 7 years, and I'm really excited to hopefully be moving into this new position. My three main priorities are going to be fostering strong relationships. That's going to be with the Métis charter communities, the interprovincial, so like the other Métis government systems, as well as our First Nations brothers and sisters. I also want to really strengthen our Métis youth in this province. The things that I want to do that are to introduce hopefully some new positions on the Métis Youth British Columbia Council. I'd like to start with introducing a vice chair position. As Brady's mentioned, and as I've mentioned before many times, youth are really busy. We move around a lot. And I myself don't think that I would be able to make absolutely everything. And I think that it would be, it would really hurt us to not be able to make it out to every opportunity that we could. So I think that a vice chair position would be incredibly important. I'd also really like to work on our Métis youth mentorship, having that below 15 years old gap kind of addressed. And I think that if we could have a position for that or find some way to really address that would be really good. I also want to have some sort of financial compensation for our regional reps. That's something that we haven't had for the last, I don't think we've had that before. I know that for myself in the last 7 years, aside from honorariums occasionally and per diem for when I go out, we haven't had any sort of real financial compensation. And I think that something even as small as say like $100 a month would really go a long way to help out in gas money to really get us across our region and really connect with more youth. And lastly, I really want to help promote mental wellness among the youth. I think that to be a strong political person, you need to have a strong spiritual health, strong mental health, and be like physically strong. It's the medicine wheel. We've been preaching this for as long as I can remember. You need to have all 4 quadrants of your medicine wheel really addressed. And I think that mental wellness has been something that's been lacking for a really long time. And I really want to have that be addressed. I want to have culturally relevant programming be really at the forefront of my mind, engaging youth with what they want to be engaged with and how they want to be engaged with. And I think that that will really help to increase and bolster the regional youth, the local youth, and help get youth in all positions and involved in all levels of Métis governance. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Davern. And so going in first order, we have Ms. Smith. She's already come on, so that's great. So again, the same question for you, Ms. Smith. Just introduce yourself a little bit for those that may not know who you are. And if you could provide your top 3 priorities and how you plan on addressing them.
Sure. First, I'd like to thank the organizers and all the participants on the call tonight. I'm sure there's some of you I know and many of you don't, and I wish we could be meeting face to face, but under these times, it's not possible. So thank you everybody for participating. I'm calling in from the Coast Salish Territory. I live in Langford, BC. I'm currently the Vice President of the Métis Nation BC, and I'm the Minister responsible for Veterans, Métis Rights, and Justice. I have 16 years Métis governance experience. I started out as a community board member, community vice president, community president, and then in 2007, I was appointed as an interim regional director for the Region 1 by the Regional Governance Council. So I'm in my 13th year on the board of directors. I have a social work degree from the University of Victoria with an Indigenous specialization. I've worked for the province of BC. I've worked for First Nations. I've taken emergency social service director training through the Justice Institute of BC. And I've also been a Red Cross personal disaster assistance worker. As a board member, I believe in everybody having their say and building on the strengths of each and every board member. I'm very passionate and knowledgeable about governance. I feel I'm open, honest, transparent, accountable, and fiscally responsible. I'm hardworking and I'm always prepared for meetings. And I take pride in that, on being prepared for meetings. So I believe that the biggest priority for Métis Nation BC in the coming years is the self-government agreement with the federal government. I believe that everything else will fall into place under that, including our Section 35 rights, different benefits such as this extended health care, which we all know so many of our Métis citizens desperately need. It's really horrible feeling when you get contacted about dentures or hearing aids or things like that, and there's nothing we can do to help our citizens at this time. I also believe that we need community capacity funding, and that would fall in place with the self-government agreement. It would also help build our relationship with the province of BC. I also believe our staff need to be respected at all times. And I also believe that we need to build relationships with our First Nations. In BC, there's 198 different First Nations, and it's a challenging task. And I don't have an answer on how that would happen, but we need to start. Some of our communities have really good working relationships with First Nations where others struggle. So we have to come up with a plan to build relationships with all First Nations in BC. So I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. And we have Mr. Bigger coming on, great. So Mr. Bigger, the same question, just to introduce yourself and if you provide your top 3 priorities and how you would go about addressing those.
Okay, my name is Gary Bigger. I've lived in the mainland. I've commercial fisherman. I was a board member of Nova Community for 2 years, and then stepped up to be the captain for Region 2 for 13 years. And then I decided to become a board member for 4 years. In that time, I was placed on the National Environment Committee for National Council, and when that was appointed to the federal government to NCSAR, which is the National Aboriginal Council on Species Risk. That's something I've been involved with pretty much my life. There's some of us in that table, I'm the Métis. So I've been involved in the environmental issue for quite a while, and it's very important to keep our people. Environmental is very important to people. My priority is having our Section 35 rates recognized in British Columbia. That is important in average and everything else, but unless your rights are actually drilled down and recognized, they can take away any time on. And they've done it in province before.
Sorry, Mr. Bigger, sorry to interrupt you. It's coming across choppy. I'm not sure if there's anything we can do from your end on your connection. There's coming in, it's chopping up. We're not hearing it quite clearly. I don't know if it's an internet connection or not. What I might suggest, if you want to try to disconnect and then reconnect.
Okay, I'll try that and I'll back you.
Yeah, thank you. And just while we wait for Mr. Bigger to reconnect, I do see we've got 16 attendees, so that's great. And I'm hoping we'll continue to get more coming on throughout the evening. For those of you on, as I mentioned, this is being recorded, and so it will be available hopefully by tomorrow, along with the other video from Tuesday. And so we're just going to wait for Mr. Bigger, see if he can get back on.
Is that any better?
We'll see. We'll see. It sounds the first part there, but we'll see if there's choppy. But I'll let you continue there.
Okay. I said Section 35 rights. That's my main priority. It always has been, because unless you have Section 35 rights recognized, they take anything else they go so anytime on it, which is really sad. And it was my second priority. I mean, issue with the early population wedding.
Sorry, Mr. Bigger. Sorry, Mr. Bigger. It's a little bit choppy. Maybe we'll just try to get you to slow down. It seems like when you were talking quietly. I don't know if you have more than one microphone on, like there, if you have different devices or something, but maybe just try slowing it down, and hopefully we won't be, it feels like it's just skipping little bits there. So go ahead and try.
Yeah, so one, maybe I'll put another. So you carry on, I'll try another computer. Get back.
So what I might do, when Mr. Bigger's back on, and we'll just use this time, maybe we'll move on to the second question for the youth. And so we'll start with Mr. Davern, if you'll come back on. Thank you.
Hey there.
So the first, the question I'll ask you, and this will be for both you and Ms. Rice, but you, we'll get you first. Many youth express feelings or feeling spiritually disconnected. They wish to participate in coming of age ceremonies and the Sweat Lodge teachings. Do you feel that there are other teachings that youth are craving, and how do you plan on supporting this transmission?
That's a really great question, and I think that it really speaks to kind of a lack of understanding for what our youth really do want. I spoke on one of our previous town halls about getting a survey out to our youth, and I think that that would really be a good way to help start to increase the amount of coming of age ceremonies or youth programming that is that culturally relevant youth programming that I say that we keep on needing. I think that if we continue to have our really strong relationship with the Ministry of Youth, we could then kind of communicate what the youth are really wanting and really craving to get that deep spiritual connection that's just been missing for a long time. So I guess in short, having a survey to really find what main things we're missing out on, and then connect with the Ministry of Youth to really help get that relevant programming out there.
Thank you. And we'll have Ms. Rice, when you're ready, same question. Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, it's okay. I know the question. Thanks, Dave. So I'm just going to speak from my own experience, and I feel like I can relate to this question because I didn't actually get my MNBC Métis card until I was entering high school, and I was still very, very reluctant to partake in any cultural activities. And so I would say I was definitely disconnected from that spiritual aspect. And the sole reason, and I can say this with absolute confidence, that I did participate was because I had an Aboriginal support worker within my high school that was Métis and is Métis. And she supported me throughout the whole process of encouraging me to get involved and really owning my identity. And without that, I wouldn't have got involved. And so one of the areas that I think that we need to look at is not necessarily, doing something like a survey or, asking our staff to do more or anything like that, because I feel like our staff do an amazing job reaching out to our youth through, surveys and as best they can. But what I would like to see is, these regional positions that we have for our youth, as well as our youth community reps. I believe that, they're the ones that are in the community. They're seeing these youth, and maybe for our larger areas, we need to explore more options. But for our rural areas, I mean, they're very small, and I feel like they can definitely benefit from our community youth reps getting involved and asking them directly, because it's that in-person contact. I know that if somebody asked me in an online survey what I was looking for, I would have no idea at that time. I honestly didn't. I was very, very new and very lost, and it really did take that in-person reaching out. So I would definitely like to see our youth reps and our regional reps be able to kind of take that role on. And then some of these programs that I think that they'd be seeking outside of, the sweat lodges and the coming of age ceremonies. One of the things that I absolutely love, because I mean, my first sweat lodge was actually in the East Coast on a reserve in New Brunswick. So, totally not Métis whatsoever, but, it definitely connected me. It was honestly hearing stories. And I know that sounds very, I guess, basic for some people, but getting to hear stories from my grandma, that's Métis, and, she didn't even think it was anything. She'd be like, I'll be like, Grandma, why did you never tell me this? Like, this is amazing. I love hearing these stories about my family and where you grew up and what you did. And she's like, well, you never asked. And I feel like, honestly, our youth would just benefit for some time hearing the stories of our people, from our elders, from other community members. It really did connect me to who we are as a people spiritually. And I think that that would be one of the things that I would really recommend.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. And so I see, I believe Mr. Bigger's back on, so hopefully if he wants to, or at least I see his name up. Mr. Bigger, if you're there and ready.
Yeah, can you hear me? Very good.
So far. So we'll just let you back on there, and maybe start again at your top 3 priorities, just because it was cutting in and out quite a bit there.
Yeah, again, is Section 35 being recognized in this province? That's major. Yeah, that's, unless we'd have that, the government could come and take it, anything they give us away. But once our rights are recognized, they can't. It's done. Healthcare for our youth, our elders. That's huge. You know, we have youth, we have elders that can't afford to get proper health. You know, I know the provinces, you know, they're paying the main part of it now, but they're not paying enough. You know, dental. You know, people can't afford to get their teeth fixed. That should be a priority there. That should be included. It is with all the other Aboriginal people, so we got to make sure that's done. And then holding the government accountable to environmental issues, that's huge. Taking them to task when they do something that isn't really going to benefit the country, or it's going to make a really detriment to the environment. That's a huge concern. Always has been. I've been involved in this stuff all my life, and you know, so that's major. You know, we have to ask our community leaders and their members, you know, what do they want to see when it comes to the environment issues. There's some major projects going on now, and we never really got the full answer from our communities what they wanted to see on this. So that's, in the future, I want to see that done. So that's pretty much, you know, anybody wants to talk to me, they got my email address. My phone number is 604-290-7818. Call me anytime. I mean, I don't sleep anyhow, but so just call me.
Thank you, Mr. Bigger, and I'll keep you on. We'll get the next question to you. So this is again a question that came from the people who registered, and I think it works well for both our vice president candidates, as you're both currently board members. The question the participant asked is, in the past 4 years, the MNBC board went in camera in a quarter of their board meetings. This means that business conducted at those meetings is not available to MNB citizens. How important is board transparency to you, and how will you ensure transparency should you be elected to vice president? Please be specific.
Well, transparency is everything, but there are times in businesses, and MNBC is a business, where you have to go in camera and not only protect the nation, but to protect the staff. You just got to do it. So that's all I can say.
Thank you. And we'll have Ms. Smith once. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think as Mr. Bigger stated, over the past year, we've had a lot of HR issues that we've had to deal with as a board, and those certainly have to be kept in camera to protect our staff. So that's very important. There's times when things are put in camera where maybe they shouldn't be. It should be open discussion and recorded in the minutes. And that's something we really need to work on in our next term for those people that are being successful. I also feel transparency is very important, and I believe that all Métis citizens deserve to know what's going on at the MNBC level. I think the communities are the foundation of our nation, and we all always need to make sure our communities and our citizens are informed, and we're being transparent about what's going on within MNBC. Thank you.
Thank you both of you. I'll have the next question for the youth, and I think we ended with Ms. Rice, so we'll start with Ms. Rice on this one. Thank you. And I think both you and Mr. Davern touched on this, but how do you plan on encouraging youth engagement in the different age groups? So if you're looking at, like you think about the ages like 6 to 12 kind of age, preteen, then the teenagers in high school, and then of course you have those that are in university or are already working, and there's those quite different needs and issues that each of those groups face, which all come under the youth group. So how do you plan on addressing those different age groups?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so obviously both me and Sean, I mean, we get this question quite a bit. So, I mean, I feel like we're both pretty comfortable with it right now and how we each, have ideas in addressing it. So for myself, looking at the different age groups, right now, for those that aren't aware, the way that it's set up is you have this provincial chair, and then you have your 7 regional youth, and then you have underneath that all the community reps. And the community reps right now can be from ages 15 and above. But like I said early in one of my statements, we are kind of missing that gap year, because we do have the early years program that the MMBC staff, MyBC, they really work hard to create a really great early learning program, and I think it is fantastic. So for me, that's why my priority was on that age group that's kind of sitting in between right now. And I would, it was something that me and, my president here had come up with a long time ago. And I'm excited that we can hopefully get it started, is having that junior youth rep position, because I think it's really important that we have somebody coming in that is already familiar with what's going on with our youth community rep and is getting involved and staying involved. And I think it's important to kind of have that building step as you go, because a lot of these positions, especially when you get to the regional stage, they do require a lot of time. And I think it's important that the youth realize that before, they get, thrust into these positions because somebody told them it was a, great opportunity. And then they're like, whoa, I do not have time for this, or I'm moving to Newfoundland and I'm, going to be away for the next 4 years. So where I see us kind of addressing that is with that position. The other priority that I had of keeping with those people that are going away to school. And then honing in on my experience. A lot of my experience, for those that don't know, is I have over 10 years of working in youth engagement, specifically Indigenous, and creating actually youth engagement plans for projects, very large projects. Some of them in Ontario, some in the North, some in BC, Alberta, and that's between both First Nations and Métis. I was very fortunate to be able to do that in Alberta and get that mix. So I'm very comfortable in creating the different packages, working with high school kids, going and speaking with them. I've done a lot of STEM programs where I have to do STEM, for those that don't know, is science, technology, engineering, and math, because that's my background and I'm passionate in it. I've gone up to Northern Labrador and worked from K all the way up to grade 12. And so I'm very comfortable in creating and helping create those programs, and look at those needs for each individual kind of age group and the stage that they're at. So I don't want to take too much more time up, so I'll be respectful of that and just let it stop there.
Thank you. And I have Mr. Davern. So Mr. Davern, the same question: how are you going to address or encourage participation or from the different kind of age groups within the youth age bracket?
Yeah, so I think that the really important thing that we can do to increase that is just increasing our engagement with all youth in general. I think that if I've said it before, take kind of what we've learned from COVID and host more regional town halls and like community town halls, we can get more youth into positions. And as we have more youth in more positions, the age gap, or not age gap, sorry, like the age variation will be a lot more varied, I believe. And as it gets more varied, we'll have more perspectives of the people in those age groups. I also spoke earlier about having that junior youth position, which Brady also brought up. I think that it's totally, I think it's crazy that we haven't had it for so long. And I think that it's such a good thing to have addressing that kind of like aging out year that it is a really unfortunate year to have. So I think that it's a really good opportunity to have and to engage the youth who are, or pre-youth, I guess. Because I know as for myself, I was in when I was 15, I started my regional position. And before that, I was a little bit involved. Wasn't too involved with, I mean, I was, 14 below. So I was as involved as I could be. I did the occasional high school program, which I think is also a great thing that we could include, as Brady brought up. I think that, yeah, we really need to start engaging with more youth. And as more youth kind of become engaged, we'll start to realize how to connect with them better. You can't really make too many connections without knowing who you're connecting with, I think. So, yeah.
Thank you. And I'll next, I think we finished off with Ms. Smith, so we'll start with Ms. Smith for the next question. Obviously, you're running for the position of vice president. How do you see that role, the role of vice president on the board, and in particular relationship with the president position?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the president and vice president need to work hand in hand. And, according to our board manual, if the president's not available for certain functions or events or speaking opportunities, that the vice president would take on that role. There's different roles as a vice president. I'm part of the executive board as well, and also have signing authority for MNBC. But it needs to be a really close working relationship, a two-way relationship, and to be able to have a healthy board. So that's something that's very important to me moving forward. And I look forward to whoever our new president is. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll have Mr. Bigger when you're ready. So Mr. Bigger, the same question. How do you see the role of the vice president on the board and in the relationship with the president position?
Well, that's a major issue there. We got to have a really good relationship between the vice and the president. Otherwise, it doesn't work. They've got to be working as a team, and that's the main thing, working as a team. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked like that for the last 4 years. We can't have that again. So otherwise, the communities and the nation suffers for it. So hopefully the next board, when they get on, they work for the betterment of the people. And that's a major thing. And that's part of the vice president's role, is to make sure that everybody on the board is working as a team, and also working with the president and making sure she's working as a team for the better of the nation.
Thank you, Mr. Bigger. I'll keep you on. We'll get the next question to you. One of the questions that's come out, what are your opinions on MNBC's involvement with the oil and gas industry and resource extraction in general?
In a lot of the ways, I don't like the way they're doing it. Fracking is one thing. Pipelines, and the one thing is with MNBC's trying to work with TMX. We've been trying to get on that committee for ever since it started, to monitor the pipeline coming in. Like it or not, the oil's coming to this coast, and I would rather see it in a pipe, which is a lot safer than the way they're hauling it now, is on trains. Anybody can look at the number of trains coming down the tracks, and they're going right beside the Fraser River and all the other river estuaries. You hear it all the time. We're having a really bad time with our salmon on this coast. And I just hope to God that we don't have a problem with the train. So I hope we can have better relationships with oil companies to make sure that our concerns are properly addressed. But at right this moment, they're not being addressed because we don't have a seat at that table.
Thank you. And we'll have Ms. Smith when you're ready. It'll be the same question.
Yeah, sure. I was born and raised on Vancouver Island, so obviously the waterways are of a huge concern to me. And I think any oil and gas work, as Mr. Bigger said, we need to have a say in it to make sure it's not going to have a negative impact on our environment. We certainly want to see our grandchildren and great grandchildren have land that they can access that is clean and viable. I also think that we sometimes we need to be cautious, and maybe we should do some more community consultation on this to really understand what our citizens want. Because in the Northeast and Northwest, there's a lot of people that earn their living and feed their families off working for these. So there's a lot of different conflicting sides, to the issue. But I think protecting our environment and making sure there's minimal impact on our lands and our waterways is priority. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll next have for the youth, I believe, and my apologies, I keep getting it mixed up which one. So we'll have to go with Ms. Rice next.
It should be Sean, but I can go if you want me to.
Oh, you know what? We'll go with Mr. Davern. Thank you for.
Okay. No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Davern. So this is a question that's come out in the Q&A and is related. So we heard talk on Tuesday about the oil and gas from the presidential candidates, and now obviously we've heard from the vice presidential candidates. The question from the attendee is saying, however, many youth and adult citizens want to see MNBC wean off of these industries. How will you help ensure that our environment is prioritized for our future generations?
Yeah, and I think that this really hits home for the youth candidates, especially because, as the youth candidates, we kind of represent the future, and how do we want the future to move forward? And I personally want to move toward a more green future. And with that, I'd really like to see MNBC start to kind of distance itself from the oil and gas industry. That's not to say that we can't still make money. There's lots of great funding opportunities out there. I think that one of the biggest things that we're really missing out on right now is the housing market and the housing funding that we have access to. I was just recently at the House of Belonging that just opened up, and it has 28 units, I believe. And housing is just such a stable source of income. And I'm hopeful that we can really start to utilize that a lot more, because I think that it's strange that we haven't in the past. I think that housing is just such a safe way to make our nation better and more financially stable, seeing as how there's rent that comes in every month from everyone there. And not only that, we can make it affordable rent for the people who are there, not completely price gouge them. And once that property is paid off, it's just making our nation money while keeping our nation housed. I think that it's such a great way to move forward, and we can start to implement green features into these housing programs. Like, we can have solar, we can have more, like up north, we can have more geothermal. Like, there's just so many opportunities that are being missed with the housing, and I really would like to see that be more engaged with. And then not only that, once we become a little more financially stable, I think that we can start buying shares in Métis-owned corporations and businesses and kind of become not shareholder, well, I guess, yes, shareholders, but not like, the monopolizing shareholder, I guess, the evil bit Mr. Monopoly, but, helping our Métis businesses by showing that we have faith in them. Our nation should stand behind our people. And I think that that's a great way to engage with all of our Métis entrepreneurs and the Métis who are starting businesses, as well as, again, making our nation financially stronger. So that's just two of the ways that I thought that we could move away from oil and gas in the hopefully near future.
Thank you. And we'll have Ms. Rice. Yep, so the same question.
Okay, thanks, Dave. So for me, I mean, it's no secret, as I said in my beginning, I'm a biologist. So I'm sure I know a lot of you know exactly where I stand in my own personal area. But the thing with this position, and that I acknowledge, is I'm not speaking for myself. I'm speaking for the youth of BC. And I think sometimes speaking with some youth, especially those that Lisa mentioned from, the Northeast and the Northwest, we have a lot of youth that work in those areas, and we have a lot of families that earn their income there. And I would feel that I'm in a privileged position that I do not work in those fields, but it would be biased of me to say that, I haven't worked in those fields, because I have. For multiple years, I was an Aboriginal traditional ecological supervisor. And in those situations, I was confronted with this question of, how are you working on this project knowing what your beliefs are? And the way that I responded to them is, would you rather somebody who didn't have the beliefs I do and had the complete opposite working on this, or would you rather have me working on this project? And then they kind of understood where I stood. And the reason for that is because, if we don't have people that are passionate about the environment and protecting it, working on these projects, and making sure before they go in, environmental assessments, environmental impacts assessments, doing the proper work, doing all of the research, pushing the buttons, we would not have, where we are today, where we are actually stopping a lot of these from going forward. We're getting, going to Supreme Court. We're making action, and the youth are a huge part of that. Obviously, with the protests, I think that is a great way that, that they are having their voices heard in that way. But again, I have to remember that in this position, I'm speaking for our youth. And so I need to hear from everyone, not just a select few, and understand what they need, from the oil and gas industry, what they want to do. And then that's exactly how I'll approach the situation. And, with oil and gas, I think that there are areas as we, continue to push to move away from that, because I feel as though, our youth definitely are, and I completely agree with it, that there are also areas where, by standing and asserting our rights, and that, we are using these areas, that we also have the opportunity to train our youth and other members of our, community that are interested in getting in, into environmental stewardship. We have the opportunity to have them trained in those areas. And then in the future, they don't need to work on those projects. They can do exactly what they want. They can work in environmental stewardship without being in oil and gas, but those skills still move forward. So I think that there's areas that we need to, really assert our rights and get our people trained in those areas and see what they want. And that's kind of, I guess, where my position is on it. And it's hard not to give my own opinion, but like I said, I'm here for their opinion. So that's what I'll say on that.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. And we'll get you to stay on. We'll get the next question to you.
Okay.
The next question I have is, so obviously the Métis Youth Chairperson is a full position on the board. How will you keep the board accountable for its actions in general, and in particular as it relates to issues that affect the youth?
So one of the things you said, particular areas that affect the youth. In my opinion, every single issue does affect the youth. I think people forget that. We are the future. We are who we're going to be in those positions within the next couple decades. And some of us may be in those positions at the next election. And so all of these issues to us are our issues, because we're inheriting that. And so we want to be at the table for all of them, not just one or two or a few, that you think we might be interested in. We're interested in all of them at this point. So I really want to iterate that. I know that the person probably typing it, didn't necessarily mean that, but I really want to just kind of hone in on that. And then for keeping the accountability and transparency, I am a very straightforward person for those who have met me. I don't necessarily, I feel like I'm a friendly person, but I also speak my mind. And in this instance, I would speak my mind on behalf of the youth. And if the youth are feeling like the board is not being transparent, I will let them know. And I will make sure that everything that needs to come out is coming out. And because I think it is important, to not have our youth informed in the way that they should be, or knowledgeable about what's going on. I do think that's a disrespect to to their knowledge, to their wisdom, and to their voice. It's extremely important to me. So to keep that accountability, I would definitely, let the board know that this is being set. And if, nothing's being changed, then unfortunately, that's where I have to use that youth position to let them know that I'm going to let the youth know, and because that is their right and I'm representing them. So that's kind of where I stand. I mean, it's a teamwork position, but like I said, the youth are behind me, and that's who I support, and that's who I'm there for. So if they're asking for things and they're not being given them, then I will need to kind of, unfortunately, make sure that the youth are aware.
Thank you. And we'll have Mr. Davern come on. So Mr. Davern, the same question for you.
Yeah, so I think that something that something that immediately comes to my mind is I hold a position on the board. I am equal. I will not be tokenized as a youth. If the board is not accountable, I'm not accountable, and I'm not okay with that. I've never been okay with that. I'm a very transparent person, and I really want people to know that I won't let these things happen. I'm very comfortable with speaking in front of people. I've spoken at the mic in most of the MNGAs and AGMs, and I've forged some really strong relationships with a lot of people, including many of the people who will potentially be in the board positions. So I'm more than happy with speaking to them one-on-one if I don't feel something is going appropriately. And furthermore, if that doesn't resolve the issue, I will bring it forward, because I won't stand for these things. These are issues that I can't let happen, and we're the future. As I truly believe that, and I don't want to leave the next future or the next generation with any issues. I want them to. I want to start standing on the shoulders of giants. I don't want to have to start rebuilding every time. I really want to have a strong foundation, and I want to leave that legacy for our next generation. So yes, that's how.
Thank you. And so now we'll the next vice presidential candidate, and again, I keep mixing up, so we'll go with Ms. Smith. I believe next. The question I have for you, again, this is one that comes from our the people who registered, our citizens. Sorry, just trying to find it. How do you plan on working with youth and women within the province during the next 4 years, should you be elected vice president?
I think it's very important to work closely with our women and youth. The women are actually a big part of the justice portfolio at this time, with the murdered and missing Indigenous women, and that will be noted in our upcoming justice strategy that's coming out. And that's a very important issue and close to all of our hearts, I believe. I think our youth are our future, and we need to be able to role model to them. We need to be including them and respecting them. And I think all our youth are important. I know that many of them struggle, trying, especially during these times, trying to focus on education and careers and jobs and many things. And housing's a big thing for our youth as well. We all know that the cost of housing everywhere in British Columbia, even to rent somewhere, is just exorbitant amount, and our youth are struggling, I think, harder than a lot of people are. Women and youth have always been very important to me. I was on the board when we first brought in the Métis Women of BC Act and the Métis Youth Act, which at that time it was the BC Métis Youth Collective, and then they changed their name over the years to MyBC, so it's Métis Youth BC. So I was very much in support of bringing those two acts, having them passed at our MNGA and AGM. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Bigger, same question for you.
Well, when it comes to the women, I mean, they are the leaders of this nation. I mean, they always have been. I mean, from my grandma to my mom and, my aunties and that, they raised us. They raised the families. They make sure us males keep our heads level. And, if they don't, you get a smack for it. They've always taught us the ways on how to respect people. If you don't respect women, go away. We don't need that. When it comes to the youth, I would like, well, even with the women, I'd like to see quarterly meetings and get their input on things, and not just one youth. I'm talking a whole bunch of youth, and and females, and get their input on what they want to see this nation do. Because we could talk about it. We've heard this, we heard that, but unless you actually sit down and have a meeting with them and a heart-to-heart talk and find out exactly what everybody's wants to see the nation move forward on, and work on the same page, you're not going to succeed. Yes, the youth are our futures, and we better make sure that as adults we start listening to our youth, because we all grew up, we've all made mistakes. We don't want to see the youth have to fix our mistakes. So, meetings, but meaningful meetings. That's the biggest thing. I mean, we go to meetings all the time, and most of it, as soon as you walk out the door, you don't hear nothing. It's the blinders are back on. But we got to have meaningful meetings with the women and the youth that move this nation forward properly.
Thank you, and we'll keep you up there, Mr. Bigger, for the next question. Obviously, with COVID, it's really highlighting some of the significant issues that face Métis people with regards to health. In your opinion, what is the largest negative contributor to Métis health, and what are some things that we could do about that?
Major issues we have with health is not having, other indigenous people seem to be able to have a lot of their health issues prioritized more than other Canadians, except us. We're seem to be behind everybody, and that can't happen because our people are suffering for it. So that's where I say Section 35 rights, get those hammered down, and hopefully then we, come up more level with our other Indigenous brothers and sisters.
Thank you. Yeah, Ms. Smith, with the same question. What do you believe the largest negative contributor to Métis health is at this point?
As we all know, COVID's really affecting people's mental health. People that are in quarantine, people that aren't going out as much. We know in our positions as board members, everything is done over the internet now, so there's very little social interaction. I do want to shout out to our health team. I think our health team is doing an excellent job with the COVID. They're putting out weekly newsletters. They're keeping us up to date on our stats. A lot of the other issues affecting Métis people is got to do, once again, with lack of extended health care, for dental, for medications. There's so many people that require certain medications that they aren't able to afford. High blood pressure is rampant amongst Métis people, heart disease, diabetes as well. And there's so many different factors that affect Métis people. In the same way that a lot of Aboriginal people are affected. But I really want to say I appreciate the work that our health ministry has done, and they've done a lot of different research. And we do have part-time health coordinators in all our regions right now. So that's a real help to Métis people, where they can have their, blood pressure monitored, having trouble saying that, glucose levels and things like that, and also have somebody to talk to, especially with regard to the increase in mental health issues among people with this quarantine. So thank you.
Thank you. And so I believe the next question is for Mr. Davrin, and he's come on perfect. So it'll be a related question. Obviously, with COVID, there's a lot of challenges. And one of the most significant challenges, and we hear about it a lot, is with regards to schooling, and whether it's high school or university. What are the challenges that you see, and is there anything as a youth chairperson that you feel you would be able to assist with in that issue?
Yeah, so I think that, I mean, for myself personally, I know that I will be moving into my first semester of nursing school, and the first semester is going to be online, which is going to be really different. I haven't really done online schooling before, so I'm a little nervous for that. I think that as a youth chair, as a youth, what I would really like to see is kind of a really easy way to connect with other youth. I know that in the past, our current youth board has spoken about having kind of like a Métis Facebook type thing, and like we've kicked around ideas on how to make that kind of cool for youth, because youth aren't really engaged on Facebook. So we've talked about like forums, or like a way to kind of make Instagram for Métis or something like that. I think that just really what I would like to do for youth in my position as the youth chair will be to make that connection be easier. So you can have, say, two people who are going through the exact same problems. They don't both have to figure it out. And then once that solution has been figured out by one of them, they can share, and then they can share that and move forward from there, and then they're on. And then not only will that kind of help answer questions, that will also make those connections between the youth and help to really keep our youth connected and have like sort of a strong network of Métis youth who they can rely on. And once we can rely on each other and identify each other, I think that will really help with kind of our Métis self-identity and how we can really just belong to our nation and kind of really make it relevant for our youth. And I think that's the really important thing. So in short, just kind of finding a way to have a social media for a social Métis media or something. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Rice, once you're up. So the same question, obviously the difficulties with schooling and COVID and those challenges.
Sure. So I guess I'll speak to a personal one, not specifically for myself, but actually my cousin that she's facing up in Prince George. And that area that she's going into right now with COVID and it's one that I feel like my siblings are okay with me sharing this, is the learning difficulties. So they're going into these programs, and their worry right now is that with the COVID situation, going into high school or university, that extra help or the extra education that they may need for classes that they may not receive now with COVID because of restrictions, with self-distancing and teachers having to reorganize schedules, and there being so many different things in place now. And I know that my cousins and my siblings are not the only one facing this, because, I've also heard this from other youth asking for support, is the tutoring. What do we have available within MMBC to help our youth going into these situations that are scared and nervous about going into these studies and not having that extra help that they're used to receiving, or otherwise just, needing that help because they know that it's going to be different and they know they don't have an easy time with scholastics. And having thought about that area, because, it was addressed to me about a month ago, I know that it's been brought up before, and I'm not aware that we do. I mean, this is just my own lack of knowledge because I haven't accessed anything like this before. Whether we even do have that funding for providing tutors, we may, but the thing with that too is then we're also running into the issues of, who's the best tutor, or, what tutors are actually appropriate, because unfortunately there are, situations out there where, they require, you to come to them, and you don't have a car, or they require, only certain hours while you're working during that time, so you can't drop off the kids. So there's a lot of issues like that. And I think that that needs to be put as a priority as we're going into the school year. And so as provincial chair and as someone who's actually worked in online tutoring, that was actually one of my 4 jobs when I was going through university in Newfoundland. I was an online tutor. So what they have in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, because they are so rural, especially in Labrador, is they have, it's called CDLI, and they have an online tutoring program where they have volunteers come in, or they give a little honorarium to university or high school students to basically say, I'm online from this time to this time, or this time to this time, and just come ask your questions. And so that's what I was. And I think that this would be a really, really great setup for MABC to have an online tutoring that, you know, was available. And we have a plethora of youth that are educated in so many different areas that, you know, I think that this would be a thing that they could easily volunteer for. I myself would be happy to volunteer for the science and the biology, especially having done that before. But I think that we have amazing youth that would love to volunteer and help our youth out who need this help. And that way we can skip the whole funding bit. And, you know, that way we're also connecting our youth that are going through a lot of the same things. And that way we're also getting that young and old youth kind of connecting as well. So that's where I would like to go. And that's a priority that I think we should have moving forward in this COVID with high school and university. So that's one area I'd like to address, but I will cut it there.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. And we'll keep you on for the next question. Yeah.
Okay.
Question this is one again that came from our citizens. Often youth events focus on, and I'm putting this in quotes, being Métis 101. They assume youth are not already encultured. And how do you plan on providing more opportunities for maybe more deeper or more authentic transmission of teachings?
Yeah, that's actually been an exciting part that I found actually being in youth events in the last few years here in BC, is that you do have, you know, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds that are just like, they know more than I do, I swear, about our Métis history. Sometimes they're like, it was 1876, not 18. And I'm like, yeah, no, you're right. And it's, you know, it's an amazing feeling to, you know, feel that pride, honestly. Like, it's humility on my part, but pride also in seeing these youth just totally show me up, because they know it, like they're taught it now. And you know, I didn't grow up with that. I know me and Sean are just like, yeah, we wish we grew up with that, but we did not. And yeah, so for me, these Métis 101s, I think they're still great to have, because we do have a lot of incoming Métis youth still. You know, I think we all know that we came from families that hid a lot of our heritage and our culture and our past. And we still have, you know, our community members coming out of the woodwork and are excited, but don't know. And so I think it's important we still have that. But I would love if, you know, during these Métis 101 workshops, if we were to identify those youth that are like, no, I know this, and to have them present, because I think one of the proudest moments I've ever had as a Métis youth was actually at a conference in February out in Ottawa. It was a health and wellness and environment and climate change conference. Yes, they were put together. But we had a youth from the north that presented on her experience with vaping, and she presented in front of, you know, PhDs and federal government employees and Health Canada and, you know, all of these very prestigious kind of positions. And she rocked it. And, you know, I would love to see our Métis youth that could do this like this. I think that they can. And I think that we need to have more confidence in them running these workshops. And if they want more, then let's ask them what more they want. And let's see if they're willing to kind of run these workshops, because I think they can. I 100% believe that they can. So that would be my answer to that is, you know, let's have them run it and let's find out, you know, what they want to do outside of those Métis 101 workshops.
Thank you. I'll go to the next question for our Mr. Davern. That's his second chance for this question. Yeah, sorry, my apologies.
Yeah, I think that, as Brady said, of course, these 101s are incredibly important. I think that probably for the next generation, or maybe the next 2 generations, we'll still have those Métis who are still just finding out who they are. And I think that for that reason, it's incredibly important to keep having these 101 sessions. But as Brady said, there are tons of Métis who are like, yeah, but what else? And I think that that's kind of where we can hook them in and really start to be like, well, what else you can do is governance. And like, that's a great place to kind of start getting the youth more involved, and those youth who are already confident in their identity to really kind of loop them back in and start helping out other youth. And then it starts kind of being like the student becomes the teacher, so to say. We can have those youth share their experience with the next youth, and so that the next youth are even more intelligent. And then it's building up stronger and stronger youth, and then those youth will become stronger and stronger adults who make a stronger nation. I really want to start kind of thinking in that, what's next, and how can we make better for the next group, the next board, the next generation. Like there's already been times when I've been like, well, for the next election, I'd really like to see it be all electronic, because as I've said before, and I believe Brady brought it up as well, mail and post in rural communities is just it's scary, like it takes so many weeks for things to be mailed, and like, well, maybe not weeks all the times, but sometimes weeks for a post to get to a location and then return from that location. And if you were, say, gone for a week and then you come back and you see that you have this parcel that has to be, to a location in 2 days, you're going to have to FedEx that or Purolate that. And that's a lot of youth aren't able to do that. So I really think that, for the next election, that's something that we can do. And that's kind of, that's something that I, as somebody who's, Métis 102, would be able to pass on to Métis 101. I think that that's really important. We can start letting the youth know that there's lots of different ways to get involved. And right now, be a local youth rep. That's the easiest way to kind of start advancing your knowledge and continuing to learn while also teaching.
Thank you. And so I believe we're at the next question for the Vice President. We'll start with Ms. Smith.
Hi.
Hi. So the question I have for you is, how do you see going forward MNBC's relationship with other First Nations, particularly with regards to consultation on resource development, as well as recognition of Métis Section 35 rights?
Yeah, I think I spoke to that a bit during my opening. As we know, there's 198 First Nations in BC and several different territorial groups. So it's going to, it's going to be a case-by-case basis how we begin to do that, because we have to build a relationship first before we can start working agreements. So it's all about relationship building. And I think it's very important. And like I said earlier, some of our Métis communities have really good relationships with First Nations, and where others just can't seem to get in. But I think it's up to MNBC to take this on, and maybe start with the leadership of the First Nations leadership, and ask for a meeting with them and see what they would recommend, and respect their protocols. And along with each and every First Nation, they each have their own language groups and protocols as well. So it's a really tricky situation, but I think it's something that's very important. Our Section 35 rights, that would be land-based rights, and water rights, harvesting rights. So it would depend on the nation where we wanted to exert our Section 35 rights. And I would hope that we would have consultation with them once we get to this point as well, just to make sure we're being respectful of their traditional territories. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll have Mr. Bigger next.
Hi.
All right, so same question. How do you see MNBC's relationship going forward with other First Nations, especially with regards to consultation on resource development and recognition of Métis Section 35 rights?
Well, that's probably going to be one of the hardest issues to deal with when it comes to Métis in this province. Everybody knows that British Columbia is a non-treaty province, and the First Nations have their hackles up now that the Métis are getting any kind of recognition. Yes, there are some First Nations where the people have good relations with them, with the members of the nations, but when it comes to the political arms of the nations, that's where the issues start. It's always the politics, but we got to start somewhere. I will not ever put Métis issues in the background to appease the First Nations, and that happens all the time, unfortunately. I'm very boisterous when it comes to these issues. I don't want to see our people ever have to suffer because the First Nations decide that the Métis aren't going to move forward, and that's what's happening now. We got to try to work through issues with First Nations, but we got to have the government deal with it. I mean, even though we're trying to do it with our own people, I mean, to try to sit down with the summit or the Union of Indian Chiefs, I can't see that happening because of the political way that they're structured, and some of their Grand Chiefs, they would never do it right now. So it's going to be an ongoing battle as the Métis move their agenda forward. But you know, we got to be respectful. I mean, I have many First Nations friends up and down the coast, and they know I'm Métis, but you know, we've never sat down and talked the hard talk on how the Métis are going to move forward, and that's a huge issue. So I don't know. I'd like to see us all come to the table, but we're going to have to do it through the governments. Federal and provincial, they're going to have to be at the table too.
Thank you. We'll keep you on, Mr. Bigger, for the next question. Next question is, what are your opinions on current discussions around Métis citizenship and race shifting? So those claiming to be Métis who perhaps do not meet the definition, the national definition of Métis.
The national definition is where it is now, and that's where it has to stay. I have a big issue with people claiming to be Métis and they're not. We have people in Vancouver and big business people that they get a hands up because they claim to be Métis or Indigenous, and it's a big issue, and it's not good. It's hurting us. We got to get that straightened out. I'd like to see a national card and a national registry. Each province has their own registry, but I'd like to see a national registry and have the genealogists go through everybody's genealogy and get it straightened out once and for all. Otherwise, we'll be talking about this in the next 20 years. We're a race of our own people, and we're going to stay that way. We cannot have people claiming they're Métis when they're not.
Thank you, Mr. Bigger. And Ms. Smith, when you're ready, the same question. Your opinions on the current discussions around Métis citizenship and race shifting.
Yeah, that's a really big topic right now. And MNBC's registry is very solid. And our registry staff works diligently to ensure that each and every Métis citizen is actually a Métis citizen. And it has been verified. There has been audit done before, because we always said our registry was verifiable, but we can't say that. Somebody has to do an audit and actually say that for us. So that has been done. So I feel very strongly about MNBC's citizenship registry, and that it's unfortunate that a lot of non-status First Nation groups have chosen to identify themselves as Métis, and I believe they're not really understanding the definition of Métis and how it affects. I know there's Métis citizens that live in other provinces and back east that qualify to be Métis citizens, but MNBC, you can only have your Métis Nation BC card if you live in British Columbia, where Manitoba Métis Federation has opened it up to people that live anywhere, as long as they meet the definition that they can have a Métis card. So I do know Métis citizens with family members back east that aren't able to have a Métis Nation BC card because they don't live in the province. So that's something we may want to look at some other time. I know there's always been a lot of talk about born in BC Métis. Well, we all have ancestors, right from the homeland. So it's not as if, we don't have historical connections. And there's also been a lot of talk about no traditional communities in British Columbia. And we do have some in the Northeast and the Kootenays. And at this time, we've hired researchers to do research on the other historic Métis communities we believe that are in British Columbia. Even right here at Fort Victoria, Métis voltigeurs were the first police force in the city of Victoria, and they were given land grants on Portage Inlet, which is that's the top of the gorge. And anybody that's been to Victoria probably knows about the Gorge Waterway. So we do have historic Métis communities in BC as well. So that's something I'm looking forward to the research group completing that research so we can finally prove that, there are historic Métis communities in BC. I just do feel bad for the people that believe that they're Métis and, in reality that they're non-status First Nations. And, our genealogy proves it and proves who we are. So I'd just like to leave it at that, but it is a really good question. And I do believe in our registry, the MNBC registry, and I believe we're solid. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. I'll get the next question. I think it's Mr. Davern's up next. And Mr. Davern, we're going to go with that same question because I think it, as we've been heard, like these issues affect youth as well. So just your opinions on current discussions around Métis citizenship and race shifting, and if you believe any kind of actions are required.
Yeah. So growing up, I was one of the fortunate few who kind of got to grow up being in that Métis culture, and really, I'm very thankful for that to this day. And I think that, citizenship should really be promoted. Like that's really important. We really need our Section 35 rights to be acknowledged. And we need to kind of have citizenship be a goal that people really strive towards. We want them to kind of, learn about who they are, where they came from. And I think that that's really important to kind of, that will kind of help to shift away some of the people who are trying to race shift into being Métis. We really need to increase our awareness and our promotion of the Métis Nation so that there's no confusion. I know that there's like lots of Aboriginal people who come from Aboriginal descent and they claim to be, they claim to be Métis. And I think that that's probably because they're missing that connection to their own personal band. I think that's really sad, but unfortunately that's not something that we can really address as the Métis Nation. We can't have somebody kind of attach onto us and try and fill that hole, I think that, they really need to find out who they are. Just because they don't know kind of where their indigeneity comes from, that doesn't mean that they're not Aboriginal. It just, it means that they're not Métis, unfortunately. It's, I think that it's really important that we really acknowledge ourselves and who we are and our ancestors. And I think that kind of as we start to, if we start to allow people to kind of identify as Métis who aren't Métis, that's really kind of doing a disservice to ourselves and to our nation. I really think that that's kind of how we have to move forward. Our registry staff is incredibly amazing. Honestly, we have such a strong registry, as Lisa Shepherd brought up. And, I have a lot of faith in them. We have a really strong registry. And I think that if we keep on moving forward the way that we're moving forward, our nation will kind of remain strong.
Thank you, Mr. Davern. And Ms. Rice, when you're ready.
So sorry, I was right-clicking.
Yeah, no, same question to you.
Okay, I was like, why isn't this working? Yeah, so in regards to that question, yeah, listening to Lisa, I really resonated with that because the part with that is I do have friends that do identify as Eastern Métis. And those friends, you know, I completely agree. I have a hard time, and we have some very hard discussions because that word has been used in different ways across, you know, Turtle Island, and we aren't in control of our words. And I think one of the greatest lessons that I learned in regards to control of our words is when I learned what the dirty word for our women, how that got changed, and how that word was used by people that were not our people. And unfortunately, we just don't have control over who uses, you know, what words. And I think that's kind of what happened is, you know, we have always been Métis people. We will always be Métis people. But that word, unfortunately, can be used by other people, you know, and that's kind of what happened over the years as you had a generation of people that unfortunately went through separation from their own nation, and that word identified as half-breed, and that's how they felt half-breed, and so that's how they identified themselves, and they have a strong connection to that word specifically, not our culture. And I do feel as though having these conversations with people, I don't think that cutting them off completely and saying, you know, you don't belong to us, you don't know what you're talking about, this is who we are. I personally don't feel like that's the right way to go about it either, because I feel like they're just going to dig in their feet and be like, no, this is who we are and you can't tell us any different. And I understand that that is who they're connecting to. That's the word. I think it's, you know, having further discussions and having more of our culture be present across, you know, the nation and our homelands, and sharing this, not even just within our homelands, but as, you know, Lisa mentioned and I mentioned and Sean's talked about as well, we have our Métis people all over. And I think that, you know, bringing them into our province, such as Manitoba does, is the right thing to do, because they are our people. And I think that they have the right to represent who they are when they're, say, living in Newfoundland or living in Nova Scotia, because that was one of the hardest things for me, was when I was living in Newfoundland, to be proud and own my identity in a land that wasn't mine. And I think that by having that card, I was able to really own that, and kind of be like, no, I am a citizen of NBC. You cannot tell me any different. I am Métis. I know where my family comes from. Just because I'm not there right now does not mean I'm any less Métis. And I want to be able to make sure that our citizens and community members and our Métis brothers and sisters have that right when they are living outside our homeland. So for me, the citizen issue, it does hit home. It was important to me when I was, you know, especially when I was even in the UK, because they know even less than when you're in the East Coast, because it is Mi'kmaq in Newfoundland, and that's it. Because Beothuk, unfortunately, isn't there anymore. But yeah, I think it's extremely important to have that piece and to connect with our people and have our citizenship, and no matter where you are, because we are one nation, and I think we need to remember that.
Thank you. And we'll keep you on there, Ms. Rice.
Yeah.
So it's a question that came in through the Q&A. And I mean, you've touched on parts of it, but how will you work with, support, and stay connected to our regional youth reps? And I would add community youth reps as well.
Yeah. No, and I like that you added community youth reps, because I think it does need to, everyone needs to be connected at this point. I don't think that there needs to be that separation from, you know, a hierarchy. I really don't like that, because honestly, yeah, I'm just a voice for everyone else. There is no hierarchy. It's and honestly, as I said before, I plan on having those that are interested in certain areas that honestly, you know, even if I have an interest, I don't have time for it, and we need to uplift those youth. So that was kind of one of the areas that I saw in connecting with, you know, our regional reps and community reps specifically, is as we move forward after this election and we find out who's involved, one of my biggest priorities was finding out, what are you interested in? Is it just governance, governance and law? Is it, our culture and language? Let's find out what you're passionate about other than just being in this position and fostering our youth, so that we can make sure that, I'm able to communicate any opportunity and any commerce or anything that comes my way that is of your interest, I can send to you, and I know that you'll do the best thing for it. Because that, to me, when you connect with a passion, that you are doing your absolute best, you're doing everything you can for that. And I have absolute faith that, with our regional reps, with our community reps, that they would do it. Because honestly, to take on those positions, it's not an easy thing. And I don't think many people realize how much time is volunteered by our youth in these positions. Some of them do incredible work, and they do more than just their community youth rep positions. They are sometimes secretaries. They are the main volunteer. They are running so much of these communities that unfortunately, but they're listed as the youth rep and they don't get all these other acknowledgements. So in further communication, in the past, we've had regular meetings as a regional chair, but there has not been regional youth meetings consistently. It was definitely piloted in the last couple of years. And I do think it's a great idea to start kind of having those regional youth meetings. Because the unfortunate thing, like we said, youth are not available a lot. It is very hard to come together at the same time. Things happen. People are busy, and we all have jobs or school or work and stressed out, or, things come up. So for our youth, I think that it's important that we do support those regional get-togethers. There has been talk of whether we can fund this in the future because, as Shauna said as well, it's not cheap and we don't have money. A lot of us are, paying student debt, such as myself. So, to be able to fund those, whether that's grassroots funding or whether that's coming from above, I think that that's important. And that's a great way to stay connected as regional reps with your community reps, and then bring that information to the board meeting. I myself, outside COVID, I've been to every area of BC and I really enjoy it. And I continue to plan to, be in as much of the province as I can be in those 4 years if I'm elected. My family, as I mentioned, my Métis family, a lot of them are in Prince George. I have others on the island. I'm here in the Kootenays, and I go to Vancouver quite a bit because that's, where the hub of meetings is. So I look forward to the opportunity to honestly meet with youth in person as COVID, passes and we're able to do that. And in the meantime, we will continue to use these, online platforms to do that. And the other bit is that my door is always open. I'm always available. And for those who have ever contacted me at 3 a.m., I do respond. So that's the other way that I look to support them, is just being a friend when they need it.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. And Mr. Davern, do you need me to repeat the question, or?
No, I'm good. Thank you. I think that for me, what I really want to be is I want to be the regional or the provincial youth chair, sorry, who kind of like asks the regional and community youth reps what they want, what they need. I want to make sure that they have that real sense of belonging in our governance. I want them to know that, I'll be representing them and therefore like I'll work for them. It's not the other way around. I want to work from that grassroots perspective that everybody always talks about, and really kind of embody that. I want to make sure that we have at least monthly connections of some sort, even if it's something as small as a check-in, I think that what we've been learning through COVID-19 is that Zoom is an incredibly powerful tool. We don't need to have all this extra funding to have just a quick check-in of once a month of, hey, how are we all doing? What have you been up to? I think that just like something small like that, to just remind them that we have that connection and that they're part of something bigger, is going to be really important to them. I also wanted to really quickly address and apologize to both Lisa Smith and Lisa Shepard. I said Lisa Shepard in my previous answer, and I meant Lisa Smith. So sorry to both of you ladies. I was looking through our participant list as I was going, and I was like, oh, Lisa Shepard's on here, and I said Lisa Shepard. So my apologies to both of you ladies. Sorry about that. But yes, kind of going back, I really just want to let the youth know that I'll be there for them. In doing that, I want to just really have that feeling of belonging, really be entrenched with them. I want to try and move towards some funding for our regional youth reps, as I spoke about previously, so that they can kind of justify taking an hour of a month to just kind of like speak to me and like spend time with me and ask me if they need anything. I think that would be a really good way to kind of encourage that extra little bit of communication and that kind of the extra sort of responsibility that I feel can be missing from the regional youth rep position. I know that I've kind of felt that lack myself in the past 7 years, where I'll be sitting there and I'll be like, well, I have to work tonight, and so I can't make this call. Whereas if I knew that, I was going to get like kicked $100 or something, then I could, help to justify that and, kind of have that knowledge that my time is valued. So I think that will be a really important thing. And also moving forward with having a vice youth chair, I think that will also really help to increase my sort of availability, being able to extend some form of the youth chair position if I'm busy, or if the youth chair or the vice youth chair is busy. So just kind of increasing opportunities to be available is, I think, really important.
Thank you, Mr. Davern. I'll keep you up. I'll keep you up there for what next question. It's a question that just came in regarding murder and missing Indigenous women. Question here is 55% of all murdered and missing and murdered Indigenous women are under 30, and 17% are less than 18. 28% of all occur in BC, and over 50% occur in the West. How will you be an advocate in this area?
So this is something that's really close to home for me. I have a younger sister myself, and it's something that's it's scary, kind of knowing every day that there's such a large majority of it is Aboriginal women, and of that, half of them are Aboriginal are youth, and that's a really scary thought. I'd really like to work with our other committees. I'd really like to kind of touch base with the Women's Committee, and just kind of get their take on it. I know that in the last, I believe it was the year before last year, we had our Sashing Our Warriors event, which took place in Vancouver. And that was a really, really powerful event that it meant a lot to me. It was really important that we could kind of have a Métis specific answer to the Moosehide campaign. And I remember I was there with Drew Nagao, and we were putting together these little Sashing Our Warriors pamphlets where you could have, it was a little pamphlet, like a little booklet that had two of those like little lapel sashes for our Sashing Our Warriors. And just putting those together and handing them out to people and being able to hand out that that little sash, it meant so much. And I'm so proud to wear mine, and I was lucky enough to be gifted a full version of the sash, which I then gifted to my mother because she does so much work for our women. And I just think that's a great way that we can do that, and I'd really like to try and revitalize that whole program, with, of course, with the Women's Committee as well, and see if we could really move forward in kind of a holistic way of both our perspectives coming together and revitalizing it.
Thank you, Mr. Davern. And Ms. Rice, once you're up, same question to you.
So for me, when this issue has, obviously been in place for way too long, but I actually started getting involved when I was still back in Newfoundland in school. there was, I'm not sure if anyone will remember, but basically there was a movement where young Indigenous youth posted their photo and had their photo as hashtag Am I Next? And this was something that both myself and my roommate at the time, who is Inuit, you know, it hit home for us. And especially when there was an Inuit from Labrador that unfortunately was murdered the following year. And so it's a point that it's not just that it hits home, it's the point that, you know, I've faced, and it's difficult to talk about because you see the destruction and the absolute inequality that's faced by our women. And putting the hashtag Am I Next is, you know, it's truth. It's hard talking about it because, you know, I'm part of that group, and whenever there's women's marches, I make it a point that I'm in there because, you know, this issue is not going away and it's not getting better. And we need to continue, and we need to continue doing more. And one of the areas that I see us working in, you know, with the youth and the women's group together, along with support from the board, because I know that the board supports this, this huge issue, is that for our Métis women that are at risk, and we know this from our health reports as well, our Métis women youth, or our Métis women and our Métis female youth, is that it's, you know, there's so many complexities to it. And two of the biggest ones that have been brought forward is our healthcare system and our justice system. And where those are not my expertise, I know that we have amazing Métis youth that work in both those areas, actually. And I think we look to them. I think we look to our Métis youth that are females that are working in the health and wellness and in the justice system. And we look to how we can improve, you know, these areas for our female, both our women and our youth, because, you know, one of the questions, I was actually at the hospital today, and one of the questions I got asked, and I've never been asked this before, was, are you in a relationship that you feel threatened or violated, or that you can't speak to anyone about? And I'd never been asked that before. And I'm wondering, I'm like, am I being targeted because they see on my thing that I'm Métis, or that I said I was Métis, or are they just asking it for all women? So I was curious at that point. But I think this is just one small area in our healthcare system where, you know, we have the opportunity to help our female youth and women. And I think that we can do better. And I think that there's ways that we can come together, and, you know, having these opportunities for safe spaces for those facing these issues. I think that that's a big thing. And I was actually like, if this is not about me being Métis, that is totally fine with me. I think this is a great question to be asked, and I'm glad you're asking it. But one of the areas I actually thought about, and this is the first time I've actually ever said it, is an identification for our health workers that basically says, I'm a safe person for you to talk to as a First Nation, Métis, or Inuit person. And I think we need that, because right now we have many women and many female youth that are going through situations that could end up as a statistic, which is so wrong. And what they need is a safe space. So I think that having an identifier, not a moose hide or a sash warrior, just a discrete identifier that says I am safe, I think that would make a huge difference for a lot of these females entering the health clinics and the hospitals. So that's my bet.
Thank you. So we're getting close to the very end here. So we'll have one last question for each participant. We'll start with the vice president candidate. And again, I mixed them all up, but perhaps we'll start with Mr. Bigger on this last one. This last question, simple question, but why are you running for this position, and why should people vote for you as vice president?
I'm running for this position because I want to see our man finished. I started out to make sure our Section 35 rights are finally realized. I started 30 years ago at this, and that's important because without our rights being recognized, we're just a secondary people and we're a service group. And I don't want to see that. We have the rights that are afforded to us under the Supreme Court of case in the Powley case. The Daniels case came along, and the federal government has a fiduciary duty. Unfortunately, there was some part of that ruling. They never defined who the Métis are, and I want to make sure, as vice president, that Canada knows who the Métis are. So our youth don't have to do this. 6 generations down the road, they'll look back and say, okay, we know who we are. There's no confusion, and I want to make sure that's done.
Thank you, Mr. Bigger. And before you go off, before we have Ms. Smith on, is there any way, if anyone has questions, I think you've provided your email address and we'll do that. Is there anywhere else that people could reach you or find out information on your platform or anything like that?
Yep, anybody, well, I'm on Facebook now. I've never done that before, but I'm finally on Facebook. But anybody wants to ask me any questions, again, 604-290-7818. And I'll talk to anybody anytime. And hopefully to get your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bigger. And we'll next have Ms. Smith. So Ms. Smith, same question to you. Why are you running for this position and why should people vote for you?
Thank you for that question. As I mentioned earlier, I have 16 years experience with Métis governance. I'm in my 13th year on the board. And not only do you gain knowledge about our governance system, you also gain corporate knowledge and about the way things work. So I think experience is very valuable. I also think each and every one of our ministries is very important. We haven't talked about children and families tonight, but we all know the importance of that. Our veterans, past, present, and future. I have so much respect for them and I'm very passionate. I've been on the Veterans File now for 12 years. Our Senate hasn't been mentioned, and just want to say that, if we want to be a self-governing nation, we do need our Senate as our judicial system. We have to have our own judicial system, and they're very underutilized at this time. In part of our justice strategy, we'll be able to get some training for our Senate for restorative justice, for more conflict resolution, and not just, hearing citizenship appeals. They are very underutilized, and I have a lot of respect for them as our judicial system. So I think we need to keep that in mind as well. Over the last few years, we've done a lot of community consultations, and I've been able to get out on many occasions. We did Section Métis rights consultations in every community in BC. I led the poverty reduction regional consultations, and just past year, I led the justice community consultations as well. So I really do believe the voice of every single Métis citizen is knowledge. And we need to respect the voices of each and every individual Métis citizen and make decisions as a collective. And I also think another thing we haven't mentioned tonight is culture and language. And, our culture and language is vital to our future, along with our youth being the future. And I didn't mention I'm a mother and my grandmother, and I have 2 beautiful great-granddaughters as well. So I'm very passionate about family and family values. So I'd just like to say it's been an honor to be your vice president over the past 4 years. And I hope this would be my 4th election. So I would love to have your support. And anybody that wants to contact me can do so at Lisa, LISSA 5@telus.net. My cell number is 778-535-5740. And I'd love to hear from you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith. And do you have anything on Facebook or anything like that as well?
Sure, I'm on Facebook. My Facebook name is Lisa Dawn Smith. So it's Lisa with 2 S's, just so people don't get confused. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We'll next go to our youth, and we finish with Brady, Ms. Rice. So we'll start with Ms. Rice, and then we can wrapping around, and then we'll have Mr. Davern. So Ms. Rice, the same question. Why are you running for your position, and why should the youth be voting for you?
Okay. So I think I did state this maybe in the beginning, but I'll reiterate. The reason I'm running is because I'm now in a position where I feel as though I'm in, a work environment that is supportive of what I'm doing, and that I have the time that I'm able to commit to, what this role needs. And that's the first and foremost reason why I was running, and why I've decided to run. But in addition to that, why I think people should vote for me, and why I'm also running for this role is because of, as Lisa mentioned, the experience is a big part of that. And I've been, very passionate about youth engagement for many, many years, since I was quite young, actually. And I stated in the last town hall I was in for Region 3, I've been doing youth activities and been in youth roles since I was 15 for my community in the Relay for Life, as well as running different fundraisers, starting prostate cancer awareness campaigns with our local hockey because it was important to me, as well as, fundraisers for Haiti during the earthquake in 2010. So youth has always been a big thing for me, getting them involved and making sure that they feel valued. In my positions moving forward, a lot of my summer jobs have always included an aspect of youth. So as I said, I have over a decade of experience in youth engagement with not only our Métis youth, but Indigenous youth in general, First Nation, Métis, and Inuit. And I feel as though, I'm so excited to be able to give back, what my community and what so many other people have given to me over the years. And I'm excited to be able to do what I can for my community now that I get to be back here after 10 years. It's a very exciting time for me to be back in my hometown. And I think that that's one of the biggest reasons is that, my passion and my experience in this area sets me up as a great person for this role, as well as my connections that do span across our Métis youth. There's many Métis youth within the other provinces, such as Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba that I've been in contact with over the last couple of years, and stirring up ideas and ready to create so many great things as just youth, like not outside of everything else, because I think once you have an idea, sometimes you just need to put it into action, and regardless of what anyone else thinks. And I think as a youth, I'm ready to do that for our people, and I'm ready to just be a strong voice for you guys and put what you guys want into action. That's exactly what I'm here for. So, use me as you need me. It's, if you need a friend, if you need someone to just check in, or someone to call your school to ask questions because you're nervous about asking your parents, I'm here. I'm ready to be that person. So I really hope our Métis youth are participating in this voting election as much as possible. And if you need help, reach out either on Facebook or through email. I am here to help assist you in that. I do want to say one of the biggest things I've actually come across is when doing nominations is, Brady, I would love to be your nominator, but I have no idea where my card is. I cannot say actually how many youth do not know where their card is. So one of my big things actually right now is helping them make sure they get their card back and reapply for those, getting those cards resent to them. So yeah, if you need that help as well, let me know and I'll help you get your card back. All right. Thank you, Dave and the GEMS crew and everyone for being here tonight. So hi.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rice. And our final candidate speaker tonight, Mr. Davern. And same question. Why are you running for Métis Youth Provincial Chairperson, and why should people vote for you?
I think that the reasons why I'm running is because I feel that the youth haven't been equally engaged and equally represented in the past 7 years since I've been on. And I really want to kind of bring forward that non-tokenized role of the Métis youth. I really think that that is one of the things that has really kind of bothered me in my experience so far in being on the board. We talk a lot, and I know this is just governance in general, but we talk a lot, and then we hum and haw on how we can do things, and we come up on how we can do things, and then they're rarely implemented. And I think that that's what really kills me, and has killed me as as the regional youth rep that I've been. And that's why I really want to kind of step up and start to kind of action all these great ideas. I have so many things from the past boards that have just kind of fallen to the wayside, and I'd really like to kind of dig these ideas back up and really start to bring them back up, I guess. Why I should be voted for, I believe I am extremely passionate in my position. I have a lot of experience in in being Métis. I've been doing stuff since 2010 now. I was the BC ambassador for the Back to Batoche when I was 13 years old. So yeah, I've been around the block a few times, and I'm really comfortable with the way that our governance is run. And I feel that with that confidence comes the ability to kind of shake it up. And I feel that that's kind of a unique thing to be able to offer. I know that Lisa Smith also has that ability and that kind of that background in being on the boards for such a long time. And I think that that's kind of an invaluable asset. If you want to contact me, I've posted my information in the chat there. Yeah, I really hope that come the election, you'll vote for me and then put your ballot into the mail immediately, because mail is scary. And I hope that moving forward, even if not elected, we can move to an electronic ballot system for the next election so that we don't have to worry about these things. So thank you all for your time. Thank you so much, Dave, for hosting. Thank you, Golden Ears, for assisting and setting this up. And I hope that you all have an amazing weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Davern. And thank you again to all the candidates who gave up their time so that they could answer our questions, the citizens' questions, and so that we could have a better idea of whom we were voting for. So that's the end. We're just a few minutes over, so that's not too bad. So again, I want to thank all the attendees for coming, and it looks like most of you stayed on the entire time, so that's great. I want to thank again the board at Golden Ears Métis Society for agreeing and deciding to put this on. I think this has been a good opportunity for our community members, and we've been happy to share that opportunity with community members from other communities so that we have these opportunities, particularly given the fact that the in-person meet and greets and events have really been cut down as a result of COVID. So I want to thank everyone, and of course our volunteers who have been assisting. I really appreciate all your assistance and messages and help in the background is much appreciated. So I see we have our candidates coming back on. At least I can see them. I don't know if everyone has the same view that I do. As I said, this has been recorded, and we expect this to go up on the Golden Ears Métis Society YouTube channel tomorrow, if not tonight. So usually it takes a while for it to do its thing. So before we leave, I'll just do again a final thank you and a brief closing prayer, and then we'll be on for our weekends. So we're one more day and then the weekend. Creator, I want to thank you for the opportunity we've had this evening to hear from our future leaders and current leaders, and to have the opportunity to ask questions that are important, that are at the forefront of our mind during these days and during the event, the election. I want to thank you for the respect shown by the candidates for attending, and their words with the wisdom that they have provided. Creator, you've made it difficult choices for us, but important choices, and we appreciate that opportunity. I hope, Creator, that thank you for getting everyone home safely tonight, whether it's just going to the next room, but and keeping everyone safe during these uncertain times. And we thank you for that. So miigwech, thank you. And everyone, thank you very much for coming tonight. And keep in mind, September 21st is the election date, but that's when the ballots have to be received. Keep that in mind. They should be coming out shortly. Make sure you give yourself time that that you can get those ballots there, particularly if you're in more rural communities. Make sure you keep that in mind. So thank you, everyone, and hope you all have a good night and a good weekend.
Hi. Dave, should I remove your dad?
Hello.
Yeah, you can.
It's a bit of an aggressive move, but I just removed all of our participants.
That's fine.
I did that last time.
Aggressive.
Are we still recording? It shows it's still recording.
Yeah. Stop.